Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin, and this is the lovely Marcia Keith, my dear wife.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday.
And it's our Friday McDuff Lives open chat. However, it happens to be also June the 6th of 2025 today. And June the 6th is the day in which my father, Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr., passed away. And we have been celebrating his amazing life together with the Ospreys and our good friends, our colleagues that do these type of live streams. People all over the country and all over the world have started to follow our our shows about McDuff. And this day, June the 6th of 2021, was the 50th anniversary of his passing. So we did create a special memorial service, and we had a videographer come. It was Tyler Lambert of Lambert Camera Works,
Yes.
and he did a fantastic job, put together 2.5 hours of video for us, and really lovely stuff. But for this show today, we decided to make some difficult cuts and make it more of a easier to consume in about an hour.
Right. There was so much good stuff. It was not easy to do.
So that's what we did yesterday, and so we are about to present to you our cut of the video that was created by Lambert Camera Works back in 2021. This is the first time it's been seen anywhere, and we will be publishing. Right. We will be publishing the entire 2.5 hours tonight on these same channels, the same McDuff channels. So those of you that wanted to see someone in particular that's not on, everybody will be represented and tonight in the full 2.5 hour video. So what we have today, we have musical introductions by Timothy Judd, violin, Nicole Collins, soprano, and we have two of our country's best and most important authors, Andrew Craig, who's the author of this great book, Presidential Puppetry, and Douglas Valentine, the author of at least a half a dozen essential books for the Phoenix program, and of course, TDY, a book in which my own father McDuff appears as a character under the name of Mr. Hammer. Yeah. So we are going to include all of Andrew Craig and also all of Doug Valentine, and then there's a musical conclusion at the end, which
and don't forget some comments by you.
A few comments by me.
Yeah.
Well, after all, it was my dad. So
and I want to just jump in before you play the video and say a few things. First of all, tip of the hat to Tyler Lambert. We knew Tyler because I used to work with him when we both worked for Charles County government. And Tyler is a brilliant videographer, and I was quite moved yesterday when we were watching the video, and I saw some of the work he did, especially on the intro and then the ending. I was just enormously moved by that. The other thing I want to say is to you, John, and that is how proud I am of you for making all of this happen. And that includes writing the book. When I first met you, you talked about writing a book about your dad, and you continued talking about it and gathering information and putting together your thoughts. And I am so proud of what you have accomplished in having written that book, John's McDuff Lives book, which is available on Amazon. But you'll see that day was the launch of his book as well. And the day itself, you put that day together and you brought together people who could speak about your dad and make the whole thing happen. And you did a beautiful job. And I'm just so proud of you. Every piece of it you did was wonderful. And I will give a little bit of a tip that towards the end, John does do some singing, and he does a beautiful job with that too, because you do have so many talents. So I really wanted to say that, and I know that your dad would be very, very proud of you, very proud of you, as I am. And I just wanted to tip my hat to you too, and to all the people who helped make it all happen, who were there that day, who contributed in one way or another. Many are listed at the end on the credits. So here we go.
Thank you, Marcia. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives, and welcome here to the Maryland Veterans Memorial Museum at Patriot Park here in Newburgh, Maryland, where we are live with our great producers from Neighborhood News Studio. Andy DeBala here is handling the boards, and we apologize for the slight delay, but now we're ready to start our program. Well, this is the 50th anniversary of the death of the man we know as McDuff. I know him as Tom O'Loughlin, or Daddy, my father. And he left this world on June the 6th of 1971 at the age of 51 years, just barely 51. He was born in March of 1920, March 21st of 1920. And so he lived for 51 years, and they were some of the most exciting, action-packed, and difficult years that our country's ever experienced. World War II involved a lot of courage, a lot of fighting, a lot of death, a lot of serious injury, and a lot of questions that even today, seem to be unanswered. As we try to sort out what's going on in our world today, we can look back at the life of somebody who lived it and learn from my father's life and his experiences what we need to know to move forward from here. 50 years seems like a long time. It may just be an average lifetime if you look at the short lives of people in the past centuries, and so it's a time in which a lot of accomplishments can be made if we put our shoulder to the wheel and work, and that's what my father did for his whole life. In 50 years, the United States was built and launched, and I think it's interesting to note that both President Thomas F. Jefferson and President John Adams died on July the 4th, 50 years exactly, of 1826, 50 years to the day after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Their deaths may have been a coincidence. They may have been the act of God. They may have been the result of some scheme behind the scenes that we can only look through darkly and try to figure out. I'm open to all of that. I think it's quite possible that there's still things that we don't understand about the lives and early deaths of those two presidents. But 50 years today is a transition, I think, not only for my father, but also for all of us. Because if we take this as the bookends of the 50 years that I believe he has spent here watching over me and my sisters, and watching over us and our country, and watching over our freedoms. And if we think, well, today is a day that Tom can rest, and we can take up the burden. And as we do that, we will feel the power that comes from doing the right thing day after day, no matter what, to serve your country, to serve God, to serve your family, all the things that we hold dear to us. That is the mission that people went to war in World War II to preserve. So I've asked Timothy Judd, violinist with the Richmond Symphony, who has become one of our Osprey group. He watches all of our shows and he sends me emails, and so I asked him to come up here if he'd like to come and play something, and he kindly agreed to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Timothy to come on up here, and we will listen to him play the Navy hymn, and following that directly will be Nicole Collins, soprano, a voice teacher, and a professional soprano here in the Washington area. I've had the privilege of singing with her on stage, and I can tell you she is a fabulous, fabulous performer and a colleague. So Timothy and then Nicole, you have the stage. to tell us a little bit about the city and the state where my father grew up, Hartford, Connecticut. We have the great privilege of having Andy Craig come down from Washington, D.C. today to tell us some things about Hartford, which he knows very well, a historian himself, as well as an attorney and an advocate for many very important causes. I met him and got to know him through his fantastic book, Presidential Puppetry, as a book which I think is going to be timeless in the way that it really does describe the scene behind the presidents of the past 30 years, what was really going on, Presidential Puppetry, a classic book by a classic gentleman, Andrew Craig.
Well, as you know, John's asked me to describe something about the culture and history and politics of Hartford, Connecticut, roughly from the time period of 1920 to 1975. You should know that the OLoughlin family forebears had come to that region following the 1840s Irish potato famine. Family members ascended the social ladder in terms of jobs, education, and civic involvement. John's father, who we're here to honor, was a Harvard graduate, a war hero, and an attorney before undertaking top secret work for the FBI. But a number of family members, including Tom Jr., suffered personal setbacks that we should also describe. These sufferings include the divorce of Tom's parents early in their 1920s marriage. This is a particularly painful experience, magnified by the observant Roman Catholic culture of both families. Especially dramatic, and as recounted in John's powerful new memoir, was John's own struggles to connect with his father, who was being tormented at the time by serious workplace conflicts that were so important and so secret that they could not be shared with his family. This culminated in John's failed attempt 50 years ago this spring to meet with his father at his deathbed, essentially. That was foiled for reasons, personal reasons, apparently because his cancer-stricken father was too preoccupied with the other things going on in the world and his life. We'll get into that a little bit more later, but regarding Hartford, as mentioned, I can assist by sharing some recollections from my time as a reporter there. In 1970, I began as a reporter with the Hartford Courant, the state's leading news organization, and I remained in Hartford for the most part for the next 18 years with an interruption to attend law school. My home was a working class area of fairly rundown 3-story apartment buildings called Frog Hollow, but it had the advantage of being very close to the newspaper, the state legislature, and the courthouses. And that provided a panorama for a young reporter like myself, then young. That city, Hartford, had been a centerpiece of American manufacturing, the insurance industry, and culture, the latter involving the world-famous literary colony called Nook Farm, which involved Mark Twain and Harriet Beecher Stowe, among other luminaries. Now, here's a problem. When you ask an aging reporter to talk about their young life and what they know about it, we could go hither and yon into what I might think is interesting, but it's not giving due credit to the occasion of this memorial or the setting of this military museum, as well as your expectations. So I took my planning problem right to the top to seek the counsel of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, former Allied Supreme Commander during World War II, as you know. Now, one of his speechwriters, then young, named James Humes, recalls that in his first assignment writing for presidents, and James Hume wrote for 5 US presidents, he had a fairly routine announcement of remarks by President Eisenhower. And he goes into the White House Oval Office in 1959, and he starts talking. And suddenly, the president takes off his glasses, starts tapping them impatiently on the desk, and interrupts by saying, "What's the QED?" And the young speechwriter responded, "QED, Mr. President?" And the president said, "QED, don't you know what that is? Quod erat demonstranda. What is to be demonstrated? What's the point? What's the bottom line? If you can't put that in one sentence, you're wasting your time and you're wasting my time." So here's my QED. The title of this talk, and perhaps it might be appropriate for the other speakers. McDuff, a legacy of tragedy and triumph, of continuing importance. With that, let's set the scene about a century ago from the perspective of the O'Loughlin family in Hartford. Family patriarch John O'Loughlin, the great-grandfather of our John, worked a century ago at Colt Industries, founded in 1836 by Samuel Colt, the inventor of the first revolver. This was the gun that won the West, and it provided a key role for, until almost the current times, in providing good jobs with opportunities abounding in other manufacturing in Hartford. Hartford's Pratt & Whitney was also a world leader, this in the realm of machine tool production, which sounds very boring perhaps, except that's what helps make sewing machine equipment and other factory tools that create such products as bicycles and so many other things that we need. The city was also the main base of Royal and Underwood typewriter manufacturing, with lots of workers living in my future neighborhood of Frog Hollow and socializing in a bar that the O'Loughlin family ran on Main Street near Colt. John O'Loughlin's son, Tom O'Loughlin, who we're here to honor, was born in the 1890s. No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. That's the grandfather, Tom O'Loughlin Sr. He was born in the 1890s, and he was groomed for a place in the Connecticut establishment. He was the first to attend college, beginning here in the Washington area at the then new Catholic University. And he graduated in 1919 with a degree in law. But alcohol problems caused him to fail the bar exam and prompt his new wife to obtain a divorce, according to family lore. That was despite the birth of a new son, Tom Jr., whom we're honoring today. The father, Tom Sr., became a teacher and school principal. After the divorce, young Tom grew up in his more prosperous family of his grandparents. His mother was only able to see him on alternate weekends. She commuted during the week from central Connecticut all the way down to a job in New York City. Young Tom would write her a postcard almost every day when he wasn't occupied on his future military and other important work. Meanwhile, the family's high hopes for success passed from the alcoholic teacher, Tom Sr., to his brother John, who was a successful executive at the iconic Hartford Fire Insurance Company, the first insurance company in the United States, and it helped make Hartford famous as an insurance center because of its reputation of paying off its claims, which some competitors in the wild and woolly days might not have been that eager to do. At any rate, John O'Loughlin was an executive there, and his son married the daughter of Hartford Mayor James Kinsella, who was the first of the Irish-American Kinsellas. There were three of them to become mayor of Hartford. So we're seeing a pattern of ascendancy of the family here. But let's take a small detour away from the O'Loughlin family to survey, as John wanted, the status of Irish-American culture in Hartford during those years. There are national implications, both for the O'Loughlin family and I would suggest for the rest of us, that continue to this day. When thinking about this Irish-American culture, some of us might be thinking of some of our favorite Irish ballads, like from the Clancy Brothers or the Dubliners. And I've particularly been thinking of that in recent months with the passing of several of my Irish-American friends and mentors, including one named Finnegan, Robert Finnegan, a great kind of classic reporter. But the O'Loughlin family was not of the hod-carrying stripe in those days. They were part of an ascendancy paralleled by the Kennedy family of Boston, of well-educated Irish-American families that were ambitious and successful in politics, including challenging the dominant Protestant, largely Republican power structure in Connecticut and elsewhere. Now, that power structure, in one sense, is symbolized by Yale College's elite secret society, Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones had been founded in the 1830s as a secret society. It involved tapping 15 students a year and inviting them to join the leadership of Skull and Bones, but also, in effect, of the entire country. It's reliably reported, when you penetrate the secrecy, that part of the funding for Skull and Bones, as well as for a number of these leading families, came from the opium trade. Now, this was described in history books and many other places as the tea trade or the spice trade. Now, even imagining, if we can, thinking, gee, people really seem to like their spices and they like their tea, but it's hard to imagine these great fortunes being built on that. Well, part of it was built on that, but the engine was profits from narcotics trafficking, I think we can reliably say, and this in the 1840s. I'll pick as one example that I just recently researched for this, but you might find interesting, showing the connections from the past to current times is the story of Cheney Mills, which is located just to the east of Hartford in the city of Manchester. Now, Cheney Mills started in the mid-1800s, and it specialized in advanced techniques for weaving silk, and it became the world's leader in manufacturing silk. And it's all very impressive. I mean, you don't easily build something like that, but it's reliably reported, again by, this time I'll name the source, Trine Day Publishing has published some books on this, that the Cheney family was assisted in this time by the opium trade that helped pave the way for expertise and success in silk manufacturing. Now here's an interesting part of this, at least I thought was interesting, that as I go through recent revelations of who was in Skull and Bones, I counted 8 members of the Cheney family as within this elite 15-person-a-year society within the years 1894 to 1902, which is pretty remarkable. And yes, it's the same Cheney family that's famous today through Vice President Dick Cheney and his daughter, the Congresswoman from Wyoming. Taking another step back to the big picture, the most successful challenger to the power structure of the last century was John Bailey. John Bailey, born around 1907, was Harvard-educated native of Hartford. He became the Democratic state chairman in 1947. He continued that post until 1975, when I was a young reporter. So Bailey was constantly in the news. And one of his innovations was to bring forward Irish-American candidates like himself, Italian-American candidates, even Jewish candidates. Someone like Abe Ribicoff, the senator, was one of the first Jewish candidates to have any success in Connecticut, and that was during the Bailey era. During this period, John Bailey was also National Party chairman from 1964 to 1968, following the successes of John F. Kennedy, who he supported for president and during the presidency until his assassination in 1963. When I became a reporter in 1970, this legacy was continuing strong. John Bailey's son, John Jr., was the top prosecutor in the Hartford region, and we'd see him around and cover his cases. John Bailey's daughter, Barbara Kennelly, became a member of Congress representing Hartford, succeeding William Cotter, a cousin of John, who had been state insurance commissioner and was creating headlines with whether to approve or not the world's biggest merger in history, the merger of Hartford Fire Insurance Company with ITT, an upstart conglomerate. So we'll end that kind of survey as saying when a member of the OLoughlin family is charged with whether to approve or not the world's biggest merger, that's working your way up in the power structure. Another Hartford contemporary of Tom Jr. was Edward Bennett Williams, a Hartford native born in 1920, about the same time, who of course came to Washington as one of the ultimate power brokers representing Washington Post, the National Catholic Church, the head of the CIA, Richard Helms, and many mob figures, as well as many other clients, both notorious and famous. It's a little hard for me to believe that the O'Loughlin family and Edward Bennett Williams, owner of the Washington Redskins, among other things, daily communicant in Mass, did not intersect in this world of law and power, either in Washington or back in Hartford. But this is all a bit of a jigsaw puzzle that we're still establishing the pieces. Meanwhile, let's return our narrative to the O'Loughlin's family's struggles in the 1930s in Hartford. Thomas Jr. strived mightily to succeed, growing up in a Depression-era broken home, and he received a scholarship to the very prestigious private school, Loomis, located just north of Hartford. His classmates included George Schultz, who went on to become the leader of the huge worldwide engineering firm Bechtel, as well as U.S. Secretary of State and a constant presence in public affairs, who just died recently. Tom also won a scholarship to Harvard College, where he was a tackle on the football team. He attended Columbia University in New York City for postgraduate military training in 1942, before undertaking expert and dangerous World War II and FBI assignments that you're going to hear about later today. These latter periods of Tom Jr.'s life included extremely harrowing and impressive duties of continuing historical importance. It was part of the tragedy of the times and his own particular upbringing and culture of conduct that he became obsessed with his duties. He had great difficulty opening up to his family, including his son John, who loved and needed him, and then, as you've heard, lost him at age 18 to a mysterious sudden cancer and without a proper goodbye. A few moments ago, I started this tribute to Tom Jr. with a story of President Eisenhower and the QED. The purpose of this last story is, as I wind up, to try to pull this all together. It goes back to the presidential speechwriter I mentioned, James Humes, and he talked, as I'll share my conclusion here, he talks about Lou Little, the iconic football coach, first at Georgetown and then at Columbia University. Little's career included leading his Columbia team to the Rose Bowl and grooming the great quarterback Sid Luckman, who revolutionized quarterbacking in football. President Eisenhower called Lou Little one of the greatest men I've ever known. The last part of my story here is not to rave about football, but to talk about something more universal, about our need for connection and respect, even as we struggle to overcome life's constant challenges. The story goes this way. In 1928, Lou Little coached Georgetown, and he had a reserve named Dennis Flaherty, who attended every scrimmage and every game with an older man. On the day of Georgetown's game against Holy Cross, its big rival, the scrub player came up to the coach and said, "Mr. Little, could I start in today's game?" "Son," the coach replied, "you're too small." "Well, Mr. Little," came the response, "if I don't do what you want, pull me out." The coach let him start the game. And the results were so spectacular that the coach left him in the entire 60 minutes. Offense, defense, kicking. And after the game, the coach said, "Flaherty, how did you know you could play a game like that?" Here's the response. "Well, Mr. Little, that was my dad I came with." every day. Dad was blind. And last night he had a heart attack. This was the first time he could see me play. In the same spirit, I'd like to thank the Thomas OLoughlin Jr., who we're here to honor, can see from afar just how much his son loves him, and in ways almost impossible to see or express during troubled times for that family 5 decades ago. Tom's son is here to say and show how he admires his son's extraordinarily brave public service, and so should we. Thank you.
By the way, we have a cake, and I suppose everyone's had a chance to have a look at it. Somebody's going to have to go over there and get the first piece. So, oh, it's me. Okay. Well, I think we'll press forward with another of our speakers. The next we have on deck, Andy. And are we lined up with Professor Hamamoto? All right. Well, everybody here knows Professor Hamamoto, and I won't take the time to give much of an introduction, except for I just love Professor Hamamoto. He has been a regular with my show on a weekly basis with George for our Thursday night trios, and a number of times I've had the privilege of interviewing him directly. The author of Servitors of Empire, a key to understanding how these elite families that Andy Craig told us about would get things done by perhaps inducing some immigrant people to do them for him. Well, with that introduction, I give you Professor Hamamoto. Anyway, thanks for being with us, Professor Hamamoto.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege to be with you here today in honor of a great American, Mr. Thomas Francis OLoughlin. And I wish to thank my friend, my colleague, Mr. John OLoughlin, for his kind invitation, allowing me to address this wonderful gathering of friends and relatives. And of course, the Osprey Nation, which is not just US, it seems to be global now. And I wish to thank Mrs. OLoughlin for her hospitality that she has extended to you there out in the Potomac, the beautiful Potomac, and those of us who are living across the country. Thank you, Mrs. OLoughlin. We tip our hat to you. And
Well, hello, everybody. I'm John OLoughlin. I am apologizing to you for a bad cut we made in the edit. If you hold on just a moment, we'll see if we can fix it up. Is this one?
No. John, I don't know. You did. What's this?
This is the one we're playing right now.
No, the next one.
That's the one that had the parentheses, and you said that wasn't us.
No, it's not there. It's TFOL tribute.
There it is.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you're gonna have to pass forward somehow. Can you do that? Start it.
Hmm?
Start it.
And so should we. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, from Mystery Island, Maryland. I'm John O'Loughlin, and welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives 2. This is my backup channel to my main channel, which is McDuff Lives, which was formerly the backup channel to McDuff, Kennedy's Man to Smash the CIA. And it was in that channel that I first encountered the great writer, Doug Valentine. So pleased to have Doug with us this morning as a continuation of the memorial service for my father, Thomas F. OLoughlin Jr., which we began on June the 6th. And Doug has kindly agreed to give us some remarks. I would introduce Doug by saying go to douglasvalentine.com and look at all of his great books, works. He's a poet as well as a nonfiction author and a fiction author. He's written the most important books in my book train on my channel, screamingospreys.com. And I've read portions, if not all of, at least 4 of his books on my show. I can't think of anyone more important to my journey to discover who my father really was and his real history so that we can share the story of my father more broadly than Doug Valentine, whose generosity has been incredible and is a very, very, very genuine, kind man, as well as a fabulous author. So I give you Doug Valentine.
Hi, John. Thanks for inviting me on your tribute to your father. I think that we really have, in a way, not something that's unique. I think most people, especially males, but also women, I've met a lot of women, who really want to know who their fathers were. And not a lot of people get a chance to really have a personal relationship at an adult level with their fathers. I know that your father died very young, and I think you were only in your late teens at the time. So you never had a chance to, ask him a lot of questions that you had about things. I was able to talk to my father. We hadn't spoken to each other for 10 years after in my 20s, but by the time I was in my 30s, we started talking. And he told me about how he'd been a prisoner of war in World War II, which I didn't know. And coincidentally, I would later find out that your father was on a naval vessel in the Gulf of Leyte while my father was being liberated in October 1944 from this prison camp. So there was this a general overall philosophical connection between us right from the beginning. And it has to do with who is my father in this world and what kind of a person is he, and how did that shape who I am? And I think this is something that touches everybody in the deepest possible way. Same thing for who's my mother, what kind of person was my mother, but especially with our fathers and our fathers having been involved in covert operations, it was more of a hurdle for both of us to try to discover who our fathers were and how that influenced us and who we were. I remember I didn't know who you were until a couple of years ago. Somebody had written to me on Facebook or an email or something and said, there's a guy reading your book, The Phoenix Program, on YouTube. He's reading it chapter by chapter, and his name is McDuff. And that was interesting to me because my father's name is Valentine, but his actual father was a guy named Garnet Day Spence. And the Spences are Scottish, and they're actually a sect of the clan McDuff. And I actually went to Scotland and did genealogical research about the Spencers and the McDuffs. So when I heard somebody named McDuff was reading my book, The Phoenix Program, I'm very interested. And I reached out to you and found out that although your name wasn't McDuff, we still nevertheless had this sort of spiritual connection through our fathers and the investigations and our own personal investigations into, who is my father in this world and what does it mean? And then later, I don't know exactly how it happened, but we started talking back and forth. And I mentioned that I had a book called TDY. I didn't know much about your father. We hadn't developed that kind of a relationship at that point. But after you read TDY, things really took off, because TDY was a book about Air Force, a military investigation with a bunch of Air Force photojournalists, photo technicians, and video technicians who went into Laos in spring of 1967 to investigate CIA drug trafficking. And I described the character in the book TDY, which is a fictionalized account of something that actually happened, about an individual who I called Mr. Hammer. Now, everybody in this story was basically had a pseudonym, and I didn't know a lot of anybody's other than the main character who told me the story. And I also gave, at his insistence, a pseudonym to him in the book, but I didn't know who these people were. The guy was involved in a covert operation and everybody had an alias. And the way the program was set up, everything was compartmented. So I only really knew how this operation unfolded. But there was a character in the book who I called Mr. Hammer, who was a civilian who did the final security check on these Air Force technicians, 4 of them who were going on this covert mission. And you and me, when you read the book TDY, because you had liked the Phoenix program and you liked what I wrote about, you immediately recognized that this person may well have been your father. And this was a revelation to me as well, because I did not know who this person was or what branch of the government he was representing. He was, for my guy, the Air Force photojournalist, he was just a civilian questioning, giving him a security check and asking about who he was. I didn't even know what branch of the government he represented. But once you told me that you suspected that this what might be your father, it opened up a whole new understanding for me that Mr. Hammer, more than I would say, very likely 99% certainty, represented a branch of the government, the military government, part of the military called the Special Activities SACSA, SACSA, Special Advisor for Covert and Special Activities, which had been formed in 1962, and it was a branch of the government, the military, to which your father had been assigned, I believe, at the time that it was formed. And he was an FBI agent who obviously would dress in civilian clothes and provided security. Well, on behalf of the FBI, was making sure that nobody who shouldn't be involved in covert activities was being recruited for jobs with this very classified and high-level organization within the military called SACSA, Special Assistant for Covert and Special Activities. And, once that happened, my understanding of what I had written took a mega leap forward. So I was always very happy that we had come together, and my own understanding of the world and of how it works increased my knowledge and my understanding, and it added a breadth of understanding to me that I had not had before. So I was always very grateful, first of all, that you had read the Phoenix program, then that you had read TDY and you liked my work and you promoted it. And through that, I came to understand a lot of things better, not just about my own life, but about how the government and the military are organized and operate. So, your father and your interest in your father and my interest in my father kind of brought us together. And I feel like I owe both our fathers an obligation to speak about them today.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. I'm very touched by what you said. You and I spoke on my show a couple of times also, and I think it was actually on the show that I realized that Mr. Hammer might very well be my dad, and somehow between the two of us, we kind of had a light bulb go off. Is it your firm opinion that the character Mr. Hammer was a real person, and that more likely than not, it was my father?
Oh, absolutely. I have no doubt. I did a lot of research into every aspect of the book TDY. At the time I wrote the book, I was very involved in a personal level with a lot of guys who had been in the U.S. Army Special Forces and in the CIA, and that who had gone on these kind of missions. So I was able to corroborate everything that happened, and that the kind of security background checks that these people went through were standing operational procedure. The way the book unfolds is exactly how it happens. You get recruited by a personnel officer. He sends you to a military security officer, and then before everything gets okay, somebody who's in at the highest levels of counterintelligence in the in the military, who isn't there representing the organization itself, but somebody who's within the organization but overseeing it, does a check just to make sure that the military isn't screwing around with people too, because everybody's always screwing around with everybody in the government and the military, and you never really know exactly what's going on. So a person like Mr. Hammer would be absolutely crucial to have that kind of person involved in overseeing every kind of covert action or special activity that the military was conducting. Somebody from the FBI who had no illusions about the military, who had no illusions about the CIA as always being a force for good, who knew that these guys, had bureaucratic interests for launching covert operations that may not have anything to do to benefit the United States government. Or the people of the United States, or might be unconstitutional, or could be compromised without the military, knowing what was going on. So it absolutely makes sense that Mr. Hammer was a person exactly like your father, an FBI agent who was working for the military, who was overseeing and making sure that they weren't, messing around or crossing lines or being infiltrated by people who could blow an operation and embarrass government. Absolutely certain.
Thank you so much. My upstairs, and I have a ring that I want to show you one day. It is a blue star sapphire ring set in gold that my father was given, I am told, by, quote, a couple of guys, unquote. I'll never know who gave him that ring, but this is a typical Army Special Forces ring from that era. And your book records the Army Special Forces being involved in providing security for the TDY mission that you wrote about in your book TDY. There's many interesting parts of my dad's career that I'm trying to unfold by publishing my book about my dad. And this ring, I haven't told that story yet, so perhaps that'll have to go into a sequel. But it was a ring that was given to my dad, and he wore it at the Pentagon but his superiors told him that he was not allowed to wear that ring. And so he took it off and gave it to his father. And when his father died, his father had it on his hand, and they were about to bury him with that ring on his hand. And I went to the funeral director and I said, no, I said, I want that ring. So I have had that Special Forces ring, which was given to my dad by a couple of guys, and we'll never know exactly who or why, but we do know that something is behind the story behind that. So I'd love to explore that a little bit with you someday. But Doug Valentine, you've been terrific this morning to share your thoughts about my father on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of his passing. And I'm sure that we'll be talking again soon. It's really, really an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, Doug.
You're very welcome. It was an honor for me to pay tribute to your father.
And thanks for sticking around for the second half of our presentation for the McDuff Memorial Weekend, honoring my father, Thomas F. OLoughlin, Jr., on the 50th anniversary of his passing. Today is June the 6th, 2021, and big event is about to happen, the book launch of McDuff Lives. Thank you all for being here, and well, let's have another song. Freude, schöne Götterfunken, Tochter aus Elysium, himmlisch hilft den Feuertrunken, himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Build the road of peace before us, build it wide and deep and long. Tread the slow and check the eager, none shall pass that curb the strong. None shall push aside another, none shall let another fall. March beside me, oh my brother, all for one and one for all. Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Oh man, I am so blown away by seeing this again. You know, after seeing this really the first time yesterday to go through the whole 2.5 hours.
Right, right.
And wow, what a feeling, you know, with incredible speakers. And, you know, Andy Craig, Douglas Valentine. How in the world did I pull that off? You know,
You did. Well, look at that. Brightmore says, bravissimo, John.
oh,
And
thank
I
you.
agree. Bravissimo.
And also bravissimo to our other speakers who you will hear tonight. That, of course, Daryl Hamamoto, Professor Hamamoto of our colleague on YouTube and other venues. A great friend of many years now, and so he will be tonight, as well as our dear friend Harley Schlanger.
Mhm.
And so Harley's portion will be also tonight. So the entire video is 2.5 hours long. So you know, maybe take it in chunks if you like, and on replay. At any rate. And we do apologize to Professor Hamamoto for playing a little bit of the edit that we were not supposed to play.
Oh, well, these things happen. But yeah, and you know, again, you did a wonderful job, and I'm very proud of you. So thank you for letting me be a part of this, and thank you everyone out there for being a part of it too.
Now, hang on just a second. They said that your audio was too low, and I'm thinking I know why.
Okay.
So, yeah, now I think that was what happened. We had, you know, we started on time, but that's not always the best choice.
Well, you know what? We did things a little differently today. And sometimes when you do things in new ways, it's a learning process. So we have learned.
Okay. All right, folks. Thanks for being with us. And again, tonight, 8 o'clock, we'll be publishing the entire video.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.